Braxcast time once again. This is the 39th episode of the Braxcast, and really what we're on is the eve of a fulfillment of another book. That book, of course, being Horseman, Welcome to Florespark. So I'm really just going to hype that up, speculate a little bit. We really don't have any other news really other than that Horseman is fulfilling next week. This is the last week to get in on the pre-order collection for that before they start fulfillment, and it seems like it's going to be a pretty efficient process. About 3,000 orders in the first day is what I was seeing, and of course they're really good at getting all those orders out once they're ready to get rocking. But we're going to go and talk basically about Horseman for this entire episode. So if you don't like Horseman, if it's not your thing, then you can tune out. I'd say come back next week, but next week I'll probably have my Horseman order, and I'll probably be showing that off. So if Horseman is your thing, you're going to like the next couple episodes of Braxcast. If it's not, then it's not going to be your thing. But regardless, don't want to bury the lead anymore. We're getting into the final print numbers. So cover A is going to have 4,600 copies. Cover B will have 2,700, and cover C, which is the foil and embossed cover, is going to have 2,100. And of course, cover D, which is that retro cover, is going to be that mass print. Is going to be that mass print, so they'll print as many as they need in perpetuity for as long as Rippaverse Comics is a thing. They will be keeping cover D in stock, like all the other mass print covers, like ISOM 1 cover C or ISOM 2 cover D, and cover Ds of Alpha Core 1 and Yaira number 1 and Gooding, I believe. So it's basically the same deal. Pretty good numbers, I'd say. Keeps everything collectible. And considering the fact that, this was a pretty successful collection, but we had 12,500 books sold. So there's probably going to be some extras available, which we'll see during some special events. When the next Horseman books comes out, I'm sure you'll see like a flash sale of covers A through C, if they have any available in stock. Of course, when they go to cons and do stuff like that, they typically have stuff that isn't in the store as evergreen products available for people to buy, and that's really that there. Of course, unlike with the campaigns, the collections don't list the cover sales by the books sold by the amount of covers sold, so I can't go and break down the percentages like I have on previous episodes of the Braxcast. If I had that information, then I would definitely be doing that, but this definitely seems to be a pretty solid collection. $750,000 in sales, 12,500 books sold, so the fans are really receptive to the idea of Horseman. They're receptive to Alpha Core, which made over $1.3 million around this time last year, and fulfilled and went into January. I believe it started its fulfillment in November of 23. So it was a really good campaign, and of course that $1.3 million really proved that the Rippaverse was more than ISOM, which is a fantastic thing to see. And of course, Horseman is really proving that as well. $750,000, and of course, Blood Roof right on its heels, making over $400,000, I believe, is fantastic to see. So Horseman's definitely going to be sticking around, especially if he gets even that animated pilot. It's going to really cement his popularity with the fans. So I want to just emphasize that we do have $750,000 in total sales. That's the mark that we've hit. The campaign is ending on the 18th, the collection is ending on the 18th, which is this Monday. So if you're watching this episode of Braxcast over the weekend, then you still got some time to get in where you fit in on this campaign. Although most likely the last benchmarks are going to be hitting is that $750,000 in total sales and that 12,500 books sold. We might get the 13,000. It was like 12,800 the last time that I checked, just before I started recording this. But of course, let's get into Horseman. It's not only just who Hector Lee Cabrillo is. Of course, he's the Horseman. He's his vigilante. This is going to be definitely not an origin story. It's going to establish him getting to Florespark, why he's in there, and why he's doing all these sorts of things, as well as establishing the dynamics that he's a part of. Of course, he's going to have this beef with Tuna that was very evident in the animated trailer, which was really good, especially those action scenes. I watched that so many times. And it's going to really focus on that. It's probably going to set up him having some sort of interaction with Club Merc and Darren Fontano, I imagine, since Darren Fontano is the big player in Florespark. It would be really interesting to see Tuna and Darren Fontano having an interaction, especially about Horseman. That would be a really good setup for our next story. Of course, and would really cement him as being this player in Florespark, especially what he wants to be, this vigilante that just goes after the criminal underworld. And this is a pretty good piece of art we've got of Horseman here with the helmet off, the batons that he had in the animated trailer. So he's definitely, he's got the guns, but he definitely uses the batons and melee weaponry. A lot of people, or I've seen, people comment on the hands, and there was a panel in Alpha Core, I forget. Well, I'm not sure if it was Sandy Kim, or I remember her name being Kim, that her fingers were drawn a bit weirdly, like there was extra fingers. This, is his thumb there, but this, this and that, or I'd say this specifically, and that as well. It's a little bit wonky. Of course, if you ask most artists, what's the hardest thing to draw, they'll say it's the hand. So I'm not going to give too much, be too angry about that. Especially when the rest of this looks so good, and especially when you look at Joe Bennett's pencil work, Art of Alpha Core, if you have that, basically his raw pencils look like good enough as like full inks. He's a very good artist. So most of the stuff he draws is absolutely perfect and on point, and there are, of course, always going to be some mistakes, but this is a great piece of art. Overall, I really like it. It really characterizes Horseman as being this like brutal character. That's how he deals with everything. He has his brute strength. He was a military specialist, so he's bringing that energy and that gravitas of just being a vicious soldier into the criminal underworld, and it's going to be a really interesting thing to see. And have someone as talented as Chuck Dixon is basically being able to write this character and have him be completely unrestrained. Batman has the no-kill rule, which is a very interesting part of his character, and he was able to write a lot of good stories about that, or with that, and of course, he had Bane and all the stuff he did with the Bat family. I'm not going to deny that Chuck Dixon wasn't able to do great work with the limitations of the Batman character, and in fact was probably better because of that, but it's going to be really, really interesting to see what Chuck Dixon does with Horseman, not only for this book, but going forward as a series, because they're already working on the next one. I'm sure they're scripting out and storyboarding out an animated series at least, or the first episode of the animated series. They've got plans for that. So there's just a lot of directions that Horseman could go. It's going to be brutal. It's going to be really interesting. And just the idea of having a vigilante in Florespark that operates like Horseman does leads to a lot of very interesting avenues that get opened up with this character. But we also want to focus not just on Horseman, but the people he's going to be going after. Of course, there's his family and the dynamics of maintaining his alter ego as Horseman with Hector Lee Cabrillo, and maintaining those familial relationships while also, hiding the fact that he's Horseman. He's this violent vigilante in secret. That'll be an interesting thing. But the villains are going to be this interesting thing as well. So we see Tuna, and he's the one who gives the monologue. He's got the most amount of lines in that trailer. And then at the very end, you've got these two characters basically saying they're going to get Horseman, they're going to go after him. But the interesting thing I want to point out here is that she's got the cross as her earrings. Of course, the cross is very standard Christian iconography, iconography. So this really just puts more of an emphasis that Christianity is going to be part of the world of the Rippaverse. That Blood Roof trailer was really clear in the fact that we seem to have Blood Roof's descendant and family lineage traced back to this classical, these classical biblical stories in the Old Testament, with mentioning basically the fall of Cain, essentially, or very heavily alluding to it. And like I said, it seems like that circle she calls has crosses, it has Ishmael, it has Adonai, which is very much, callbacks to the Old Testament. Is the stuff that's mentioned in the Old Testament. And of course, you have the crosses there as well. So it means that Christianity is most likely going to be an integral part of the Rippaverse, not just in terms of just being, part of the culture of the, the general floor of Florespark and the America that exists in the Rippaverse, but there's also going to be, stuff that happened in the Old Testament, maybe even the New Testament, that will be relevant to the characters. And I'm thinking, Bloodroot very specifically, with the fact that, she has this covenant, or her family, I should say, has this covenant with God to go after, fallen ones, the Hellions, right? So that's a very interesting thing I wanted to point out. Definitely use this picture for that. So we'll know a little bit more about her, why she wears those earrings. I'm sure we'll find out a little bit about that in Welcome to Florespark, because she's going to be one of the main antagonists. That's what the trailer seems to imply. But mostly, I think we're going to end it with, of course, comparing what little we have of Horseman, because if you read Ripazine 2, and of course you can still get Ripazine number 2, we got a little preview of the Horseman, and of course it just starts with this, one page, and then it goes into a 2-page spread, which is very similar to how Alpha Core starts. So you take a look at Alpha Core, and you see it starts off, very much with the bank robber having a hostage, and then it goes into this really epic 2-page spread where you've got the police barricade around the robber and his hostage, and of course you see those little figures there. So there's just such an amount of detail that Joe was able to get into this 2-page spread here, and then this one as well just really draws the reader in. And then of course with Horseman, we see something I would say pretty similar, where we're focusing on one character that really draws you in. Of course, you've got this little explosion here in the background, or this bright light. You've got, the motion lines. This is taking place on top of a train, and you've got, the snow and everything. It really just puts into your mind that there's a lot of motion and action and interesting things happening. And of course, you've got this pretty epic beginning of the fight scene here with this 2-page spread, and then these little panels basically showing that Horseman is whooping ass, I should say, excuse my language. So this is really seems like they've got this style set with just using a lot of these full-page and 2-page spreads and interlacing it with these more panel-heavy pages, which really maintains that fast pacing. So it's going to be similar to Alpha Core in terms of the pacing, in terms of the amount of action. It's just going to look slightly differently, but it's all going to be rendered very well. I believe Fiago Gnomes is the one. I'm not sure if it's Fiago Gnomes or Fabio Jensen who is inking this. I know Fiago Gnomes inked Alpha Core. I think I'm mixing it up. But anyway, the inks and the coloring look fantastic. Really excited to get into this one, as I said. And of course, what I'm really trying to say is that since Chuck Dixon and Joe Bennett worked on Alpha Core and they knocked that out of the park, they're going to bring that same basic formula, like I said, of those 2-page and full-page spreads being very integral to conveying the plot, especially those pretty critical action sequences, because we know with the end of Alpha Core number 1, I would say we have the most critical, I would say, part, the absolute climax of the story is conveyed to the reader in this pretty epic 2-page spread. And I imagine something like that's going to be pretty similar in Horsepark. So there's going to be a really big emphasis on the 2-page and the single-page spreads, and using Joe Bennett's really just visual, heavy-hitting ability, or his extreme artistry that he's built up with little decades of the comic book industry, working for Marvel and DC, and of course the other independent companies other than the Rippaverse, to really convey those critical and climactic scenes in the story of Horseman, like he did with Alpha Core. And of course, having a great script from Chuck Dixon is going to allow him to really knock it out of the park. So really excited for Horseman. That's really all I have to say in terms of offering up my speculation to all of you. There really isn't much more I can say until I get the book in my hands and I actually read it. Hopefully I'll get it next week. I'll get that review out as quickly as possible. And then in Braxcast, I'll probably break down the implications for that and, talk a bit more about the end of the year in terms of the reverse release schedule, because what I want to do is do a tier book of all the Rippaverse books that are currently out, and I was thinking about doing that a while ago, and I wanted to wait until Horseman was out. So once Horseman comes out, I'll probably do a formal like tier list within Braxcast of my favorite books, and I might even include Sersha and Salvage in that as well. So look out for all of that. But of course, this episode is over for now. So thank you for watching. Like, comment, subscribe below, all of that good stuff. But if even if you just lurked and watched till the end, you did far more than most people do. And of course, watching me ramble about comic books is something that not everyone's going to even want to do, but you did. So thank you so much. But I don't have anything else to say. My rambling is done. Joker is out. Thank you for tuning in to the Braxcast. Be sure to like, comment, follow, and subscribe to keep up with the Rippaverse.